Let's kick the meeting off, guys. And by the way, welcome to this new meeting by BSCA. For those who do not know me, I'm Andrea Rosnini. I'm in Italy, and I'm the president of the chapter of the Europe chapter. I'm taking the lead in this meeting because today my dear friend Eric cannot talk that much, so it's going to be me basically, a one-man show. That will manage the two speakers that we have today. Again, we are the Blockchain Supply Chain Association. For those who do know us, we do collaborate with several entities. We deal with standards, we talk with universities, companies, to boost adoption of blockchain in the world of supply chain and trade finance. So it's my pleasure today to welcome you all to this new meeting. It's going to be a different one today because we don't have a company, we don't have any companies developing solutions on blockchain, enterprise blockchain. But we have two good friends of mine. The idea came to me a while back in time to guest them both today, following an article that they both published on TOTA, the Transoceanic Trade Tech Alliance, founded by my friend Surya Shankar in Singapore. It was about data sharing in trade and trade finance context. So it's my pleasure to welcome Subra and our friend Chris Cinema from Amsterdam, Netherlands, today here, talking about trusted data exchange in a trade and trade finance context. So without losing too much time, I would handle the meeting directly to Subra to take this and to start talking about, you see, the article that you can find shared on my own profile a few days back in time. Subra, stage is yours.
Thank
and
you,
by the way,
Andrea.
welcome to the space.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thanks, Andrea and Eric, for the opportunity for Chris and I to come and share some of thoughts and ideas and to BSCA as a whole. Let me share my screen and then we can go through a conversation. Let's keep it interactive. It's probably going to be a bunch of smart people based on everything I hear about the regular attendance on this group from Andrea. Today, this invitation from Andrea is a result of a paper Chris and I co-wrote and published a couple of months ago. And this was about a review of what we had looked at, what's happening to the blockchain or the applicability of blockchain in trade finance in particular, and what we saw is evolving. So that paper led to Andrea inviting us to come and share some of the thought process that went through that. The conversation for today, we would like to structure it as following. I would take a few minutes, 5 minutes or so to introduce TOTA. And then I will hand over to Chris. Chris will talk about the paper, the contents of it, and the importance of sustainability and the digitization in maintaining sustainability. And then we will dive into the trusted data exchanges, which is the core subject. And we would like to share a bit more than what was on the white paper that we published 3 months ago. And we would like to close it with a healthy amount of time for Q&A and discussion so that we all go back richer in our thoughts and ideas. TOTA is about a year old, a little over a year old. TOTA stands for Transoceanic Trade Tech Alliance. It is structured to be a think tank, and our focus is on advancing and accelerating the digitization of trade and trade financing, with an ultimate goal of eventually, global growth with inclusion and sustainable development for everybody in the world. An ultimate objective is sustainable growth for the entire world and equality for everybody. And we believe that technology has got a huge role to play, and by accelerating the digitization, we will get there better and carry everybody together. And that mission will be achieved with the vision of being the driving force Toyota will become the driving force to create a global movement to realize the last line or the last mile of adoption. Fundamentally, we should break down digitization or the lack of it down to the last mile adoption. Look at the old telephones or cable TV analogy, which many people wouldn't understand. But end of the day, it is about getting the person who's using it without having to worry about technology to use it. But most importantly, the guiding principle that drives us is a 4-point or a 4-pronged thing: integrity with independence, objectivity with openness, complementarity while collaborating, and innovation with inclusiveness. That is pretty much the founding principles, the guiding principles of Toyota. And how do we go about doing it? I explained the why. The how is about being cooperative, collaborative. How do we do consultatively, stimulate the whole global trade? And the outcome or deliverables are discussion papers, white papers, and eventually how-to guides and possibly certification of various tools and platforms and networks that will enable this digitization to happen. So it's a multi-step, multi-year journey, but we start with being inclusive, involving everybody along the way. So that's sort of briefly what Toyota is. And among the papers that we have published in the last 12 months, this paper, TDX, the Trusted Data Exchanges, takes away the focus a bit from blockchain, but look at more as the functionality and the value addition. So I will take a pause here and pass it over to Chris.
Yeah, thank you very much, Subra, and happy to present to the audience a little bit of our observations we made in the article we did published on trusted data exchanges. But it's good to, before we go into that, that we take a little bit of a recap of what happened in the past years. The big observation we made is that we believe that at least the hype around the applicability of blockchain initiatives is over. That doesn't mean that we don't believe in blockchain and technology, but we believe that, say, we see a normalization of thoughts of the application of the technology itself. When we look at the past seven to 8 years, we also see that, say, the startups that popped up like mushrooms in the early days of 2015, 2016, and beyond, is now losing steam. So we see there a normalization as well, and I come back to that later because there's of course an important reason for that development. We also see that expectations around the new technology have been meager along the way, and of course there are solutions that may be used may use the blockchain technology to a large extent and will be successful, but say the number and the expectations we had from day one are meager, and we see that that there's a slowdown in the adoption of blockchain technology and solutions. And of course, the pandemic that has run through the world in the past 3 years has been an important aspect of which we all thought that the digitization would be absorbed with a faster pace. But we think that despite the pandemic, we missed that opportunity to really embrace digitization as a whole, including DOT. So when we go back to the startups and the situation around the expectations with regard to new technology, there are two important aspects: the startups itself, and of course the large enterprises and global banks, who were more or less the initiative takers for startups. They were driving, the MNCs and the global banks were driving innovation from day one. As the expectations of the new technology was really expecting to help them make their operations more efficient. What happened? Well, we saw that in the early days, startups were promising a lot, but were not delivering that much. And all startups, mainly startups, benefited from the hype, and there was a reason to exist. When we looked at the value add of those startups, we saw that the valuation of future value of the company, of the startup, including IP, was more important than the solution brought to the market. So startups were mainly used as marketing tools for MNCs and global banks to improve their PR and benefit, and so even their share prices benefit from startups. Say early 2021 and this year 2022, we saw a move towards normalization, and that was also caused by substantial events in the world, but also the strategic turnaround of MNCs and global banks, when they saw that innovation would take much more time than expected, and events like climate changes, sustainable requirements, but also the war on many parts of the continent forced those big companies and banks to take stock and cut down on budgets on innovation and move towards change and keep their organization running. So their license to operate became more important than the organization of tomorrow. And that really caused pain in the innovation industry, but also changed the mindset with regard to innovation itself, and had impact on industries like trade finance and supply chain markets. Next slide. Yeah. So what, as a result of that, we are still stuck with the issues we had before 2015, like we expected to improve connectivity between industries, between players in the supply chain, but silos remain silos, and we saw that trade finance was still very much depending on paper. This in spite of a lot of effort taken to reduce the amount of paper in trades, and that was really a pain for a number of players. So have we missed an opportunity here? I strongly believe that we did, and the fact that a big number of players in the market continents in the world still miss out on connectivity with important markets causes a gap in trade finance, which we need to solve. So that's why I see when we look at the new technology like DLT, we think that's a bridge too far at this point in time, and we strongly believe that there needs to be a connection between existing technology, the legacy we have, and new technology to improve connectivity and make life easier for adoption of digital solutions. What could be a next driver for speeding up digitalization? Now, we strongly believe that sustainability was one of the big movers and the catalyst to improve the sense of urgency in the market and in industries to embrace digitization of markets, but also improving digital solutions in order to connect remote areas to the industries. And as you know, there are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals set up by the United Nations. They need to be adopted in a number of years, and we strongly believe that they could be contributing to speeding up digitization. And there are, of course, aspects like climate changes and disorder in the world with regard to instability may force industries and the markets to take a closer look at new technologies but also making use of existing technologies to be sure that they are not left aside in their trades, and that they remain playing an important role in order to feed their own countries and to be able to comply to those sustainable development goals. So, given the importance of sustainability, which is more urgent than ever before, we strongly believe that digitalization could lead to eliminate inequality, for instance. And as such, the speed of action is required. On top of that, we can talk about this sustainability and digitalization, but we also see that the awareness of sustainability, as well as the funds to come to sustainability, is only there with MNCs and large banks. We strongly believe that SMEs, which are an important player in global trade, in general, do not have a clue what their carbon footprint will be for what they produce and what they trade in their day-to-day business. So, in order for them to support, we believe that digitalization could help in getting closer to their markets, and they will require digital solutions in order to come and reduce their carbon footprint and allow for remain important in their business. And well, when you look at a continent like Africa, we need to be sure that SMEs in Africa remain connected to their markets and be able to supply and to comply to supply and demand to their markets. And we strongly believe that digitalization will help them in remaining important for what they do and how they exist in their markets. It will lead to inclusiveness and participation. Next slide, Subbu. So the important cycle we discussed in our paper on trusted data exchanges is the fact that standardization, harmonization, digitization are to be used hand in hand in order to create adoption. So in order to involve SMEs, standardization of digital solutions, easy implementation, and simple solutions to connect to their legacy is an important part to create adoption for SMEs to be part to remain part of the global industry and the global markets. Simple solutions will help those companies to remain and to keep their important role in the markets, to solve and to remain their role in the markets they act in, and to be able to comply to supply and demand in the products they produce. So this virtuous cycle will go beyond blockchain. We strongly believe that new technologies need to be connected to existing technology in order to speed up digitization, especially in markets like our SMEs are operative in. And would like to hand over to Subra to discuss the trusted data exchanges and explain how these work and how we see that they will help global trade. Subra.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Chris. And we have definitely seen. I do hope many of the audience had an opportunity to read the paper. Fundamentally, we have to come to terms that whatever adoption we have tried with blockchain on trade finance, blockchain networks, we have come short of what the world needs. There are various reasons why it did not happen. And we addressed some of the lack of commitment or half-hearted commitments from the two ends of the spectrum, the startups versus enterprises. But that's also fundamentally, does a particular application require a blockchain technology? Oftentimes we had been carried away by being romanticized by the idea of blockchain. So we are just breaking down what is the value of everything that we have tried to do with blockchain in digitizing trade finance in the past. So we basically bring it down to three essential points that would form the fundamental functionality of such a network or an exchange. Number one, it should serve as an accredited exchange for all data sets and documents that support trade and trade finance, right? We are not going to do a primer on the documents involved in trade finance. We would assume that more or less everybody knows in trade finance and supply chain, the various documents needed. And there are several initiatives in digitizing these documents or a digital document of these things, but we have to break it down to data sets that can be accredited and validated to be the single document and single source of truth on all of those things. And these exchanges may not be one global exchange. And that was one of the mistakes that we had made in the past. We have tried to be boiling the ocean by creating one single network. And the only way that network will be successful is to have everybody in the world to be on the network. We believe the future will evolve to be having these exchanges that will be focused on regional and or functional group of enterprises and agencies. For example, you can even consider an entity like SWIFT as a TDX today. It is primarily a data communication exchange for banks to exchange data on a transaction. And they are accredited. Anything that comes out of SWIFT is valid and accepted by all relevant banks and financial institutions. Similarly, we might have multiple regional or functional groups that could be involving developmental institutions, that could be involving shipping companies, that could be involving people who do the last mile transportation of goods, right? All of those things. So it could be a combination of those groups, and they will serve specific functions, and they will be the accredited agency for those members who's doing it. But the most critical part of that is these exchanges will work with each other and accept each other's credentials and accreditation to any document or data set they will be doing it. This is how we believe it will evolve. It is not so much about what technology they're going to use. It's going to be a plethora of technologies. Each of these exchanges would have their own combination of technologies. One conceptual view of this technology would be like this, right? At the center is this exchange. And this exchange by itself could be a centralized repository, or it could be a blockchain network, or it could be a distributed network of a different kind. But there will be this central authority that will be the accrediting agency connecting multiple networks or servers or individuals into that. Now, the circles around it, the big circles around it, represent different networks, right? It could be a sub-network of a Chamber of Commerce. It could be a sub-network of a government agency that becomes a single window approver of all processes for a particular nation or a group of nations. ASEAN in Southeast Asia is working towards a single window where they could process all those things. So they could be connecting to a network that is run by a global third party, right? Similar that will exist. But it will also have individual SMEs subscribing to it for a very nominal fee, for a very low entry barrier, for them to be able to access the data for a functionality that they will need for executing the trade. Okay, so this is sort of a one single exchange that would have. It is not about technology, it is about functionality, what value addition they're going to do, what problem they're going to solve. And as we spoke, each of these CDXs exchanges would be connecting to other networks. Now, you can imagine this could be a mother of all blockchains, or it could be other kind of technology that we will evolve, would be a hybrid blockchain repository kind of combination. But what it will effectively mean is, ideally, all of these TDXs would communicate with each other. But even if we imagine that one or two of these connections do not exist for various reasons, legalities, they'll be able to, validate the credibility and accreditation through one or the other. So that is a classic network architecture, right? They'll be able to connect, authenticate, and validate. This would be the future in the next 15, 20 years. Whether you're going to call it a blockchain, whether it's going to be a repository, whether it is going to be a Chamber of Commerce run central server, or is it a government agency run central server, or a European Union Parliament run central servers. Right? It could be a combination of these things that will exist. And this is where the true democracy comes in, right? The rules of engagement between all of these TDXs, that is what we talk about harmonizing, right? Digitizing begins at a granular level or a singular level, but networking will only happen by harmonizing what kind of data sets we are going to do, how do we standardize that, and how do we improve digitization. So the entire cycle has to happen, right? This is a virtuous cycle. This is not a one-off process. You start at A and finish at B or C or D. This is a cycle we improve as we go through each iteration. And as we go through each iteration, the central adoption will grow, improving the effectiveness of a TDX technology, TDX network like this. To summarize, these are what we foresee or envision as the characteristics of the future digitization frameworks, which we call as TDX. Each of these individual TDX could be a central repository, or could be a blockchain network, or something in between. It could be owned by a consortia, or independent third parties, or even a government agency. It may serve different and specific functionalities and different specific standardized data sets. They will have a regional focus or industry focus, but they aim to solve full digital transaction execution within the context they play in. And they would work to harmonize across multiple legal frameworks and territories, and they will resolve any disparities or discontinuity between the expectations of the shipping industry versus the customs department, for example, things such as that. And ultimately, they should enable end-to-end digital customer experience that is not dependent on understanding technology, but it is about serving a purpose, solving a problem, and adding value. And we definitely want to sort of lead this with all the technologists on the call and every technologist we talk to. These TDXs have to become interoperable beyond homogeneous technologies and frameworks. Today, people talk about interoperability, but within certain boundaries. That boundaries limit the definition of interoperability. We definitely think that that is the future. We haven't put a technology architecture here because we don't want to put it over here. We believe we will be able to share as we work with various stakeholders along the way. I think that will give us a sufficient time for a open-ended discussion, Andrea. Is there anything you would like to add, question?
This was great presentation, by the way, Chris and Subra. But it's not over. It's going to go on with the debate, basically. Wanted to ask you both, anybody of you first. I'll go first. I see some questions in the chat, but I want to go first with a question that I have in mind. Recently, you see on social media, on all specialized reviews, you see there's a sense of urgency for trade to go digital. But I've always wondered, and I've always thought myself, do the stakeholders at any level, banks included, by the way, do they really know where and how to start from with going digital? Because that's the key problem in my own view. Why should I start first? If I were a company or bank or somebody else, involved, shipping agents, all the actors being involved in trade, where do I start from for getting fully digital? Because that's the rule. I mean, not the rule, that's the key word for the future, for being inclusive, for being harmonized and sustainable that way. So basically, would love this to understand this basic question. And I leave it on to you, by the way, Subra or Chris, whoever you are, or the two of you wants to take on this.
Shall I
Sure.
start?
Sure, Chris, you go ahead.
Yeah, it's a very it's a big question, Andrea, you raise, and you're absolutely right. Where do you start? And when you talk about the sense of urgency in digitizing trade, it's a mouthful of expectations as well, and that's one of the reasons why we may have failed in the past 7 years to really digitize trade. It starts with awareness within a company. So if there's no digitization topic on the agenda, it's very difficult to start digitizing trade or your company. So the sense of urgency, the digital agenda must be part of the sense of urgency itself. So that's one. So the second one is, if you're talking about digitizing trade, usually you talk about digitalizing 1 or 2 steps in the process, because a company is taking care of 1 or 2 or 3 steps in a trade transaction. When you talk about digitalization, the company talks about those 3 steps. But say the full digital getting trade fully digital takes more than that. That's the second one. The third thing is, it needs to be a collaborative play. So if you think you can digitalize on your own, you're lost as well. You need to look at a supply chain, at your peers, or at the industry itself, and that takes a lot of effort and patience to get there. So and from that extent, the early days of, say, the early hype of blockchain technology wasn't so bad, because banks sat together, peers sat together, shippers sat together to try to solve that cumbersome process. And it's a pity that that situation is more or less, I wouldn't say fully over, but say the situation is totally different now than it was then, because a few consortia, few collaborative initiatives are still going well. And I think that is, the sense of, if every player, a stakeholder in the trade finance industry is aware of the need for digitization, we should sit together again and have patience in getting things done. But having said that, I think there are a number of initiatives that are going quite well. They do not solve the full problem, but they solve sometimes they really solve an important aspect of trade, and we should embrace those. And like we discussed, use those trusted data exchanges to connect one with the other. Subra, can you add to that?
Sure. Digitization, everybody's selfish, right? Anybody who wants to talk about digitization, they're talking about process optimization for their own sake, right? So that is why anybody who wants to do it, how does it help my business? How do I grow my business, or how do I reduce my costs? Only 2 aspects to it, right? That is what we talk about, value addition, problem solving. But the selfishness that Chris talks about is that if you only think about you will never grow the business. You can grow the business by being inclusive, by being, understanding the requirement of other parties who you do not always align with. Sometimes your interests may be conflicting at times. If you grow your business, the other person has to lose the business. It doesn't have to be always. But there is a big value by exchanging information and data in a consistent and truthful manner. Everybody grows. Only thing you want to protect is your competition, right? From your competition. You do not want to sort of share with your competition. You do not want it to. That is why some of those so-called public blockchain conversations will never take off with trade finance business. So everything is going to be private blockchain, and private blockchain becomes very proprietary networks, and that they never interoperate. And it's a long answer, not a straightforward, simple answer. It's complicated. That is part of the reason why people like Tota are needed in this world to sort of bring this reconciliation between various parties.
Awesome. There's a couple of questions actually. One remark in the chat here. There is my friend Ayhan from Turkey that says the adoption is always in the middle. Let's solve the issue together. Adoption, guys. So we've been talking a lot. We have to admit it. In the last 3-4 years, been a talk about trade finance, digitization, trade as well. But adoption is key. This goes back to the word mindset. So this is what I noticed. Not being from the inside of the bank, by the way, but being outside and working with banks. A mindset. How to change this, and how does this has to change in your view? Because we should be reshaping our mindset and the way we do operate, in my view, at 360 degrees.
Yeah, so that's where the mindset change will happen. We tried to boil the ocean in the past. We tried to bring everybody into one single network. We couldn't convince everybody that they're going to get value. That is why we believe that a functional or regional grouping and running an exchange who understand the value addition or the problems that exist locally, they can solve it and can change the mindset, because they'll be talking a language which is easily comprehensible to the party you're talking to, right? For example, if we talk to Subra Shankar, who runs a little F&B business in Singapore, he doesn't really worry about globalization, and he doesn't worry about blockchain technology. He worries about how does he get fresh ingredients, fresh fish on a timely basis with reasonable cost so that he can serve to the table quickly in a good way, right? That conversation will happen when there are a group of similar business owners and the immediate touch point suppliers say, so right, if you actually come on this automated system, we can actually deliver the fish to you faster, right? Then that people will be talking to the fisheries, and they might even be talking to the exporters of prawns or other kinds of fish that is not readily available in the waters around Singapore, right? So mindset change happens by talking a language which addresses the person's problem. So that is why we believe that it is going to be a network of networks, a network of exchanges.
Thanks, Sugran. That's a great point of view. Chris, would
Yeah.
also have, would also
Yeah,
like to have your point on this.
I agree with that. It's mindset, but it's also priority. Yeah? So what is the priority of the people who drive change or innovation? That is key. If you're not part of the agenda, or not a part of the priority of the people who make the decision on the 360 degrees change, you will never get there. So it needs to be a common sense, of course, but also a common KPI to really change the world. I think there's, when you talk about regions, there's a big difference in getting things done as well. So the Western world strongly believes that they are already there and they don't need to change, because their technology seems to be outperforming new technologies. At least that's the idea. I think the sense of urgency in other regions in the world might be totally different. So that's an important aspect as well. Yeah, what might change that attitude? Well, the SDGs may so the outside world striving for equality on a global scale. Climate changes might, but then again, crisis might hurt those plans. There are a number of reasons not to change, and I think that the mindset must be mindset and equal division of resources on a global scale might push the real button. So it may take some time, but I think in the end, within a certain amount of time, we will get there. We need, and people like us, we still need to keep on pushing.
Perfect, Chris. Thank you so much. There's a very good question from Meral Şengül. She's asking, blockchain or DLT itself is enabling decentralization, the enabling immunity of data. What do we need accreditation of platforms transacting with blockchain tech? That's a highly technical question, Chris and Subra. Who wants to take on this?
Let me attempt to answer it, right? Question. Thanks, Meryl, for that. What if we had achieved our ideal state, the nirvana with blockchain, right? 3 years ago, I was a complete believer that a blockchain network will resolve every single problem that we had in trade finance, the lack of trust issue, right? The problems with whether it is bill of lading, right? Or is it a letter of credit, whatever document, we thought we are going to fix it by putting everybody on blockchain. What we failed to understand is that to get everybody on blockchain and to be able to completely give people the assurance that this is not like, Bitcoin blockchain kind of a thing, it was really hard. And we were, in the meantime, evolving multiple proprietary blockchain networks. I'm guilty of being part of at least 2 of them, right? And we started to create an imaginary world where these things work perfectly, right? The number of press releases that we saw in 2019, 2020 was like, if you had just read the press releases, we thought that we already achieved, digitization without any kind of hassle. But come 2022, we have not. So blockchain adoption has not happened the way we anticipated. So it is going to be still some silos. The silos still exist. And how do we overcome the silos is bringing in that level of accreditation. So even, for example, right, I think, Meryl, your question is going to be this. In this single exchange, if the single exchange is a blockchain, why do we need accreditation? Now, not everybody is going to be a participant in a blockchain. For example, these 3 big circles are, you can consider as nodes, but there could be other people who could be coming in not as a member of the blockchain, and they could be submitting a document, and that may be accredited and be floated on this blockchain without having to become a full-fledged member of the blockchain. That way, we will make the entry barrier lower and lower for anybody small, how small they are, to be part of such a network. Does it answer, Meryl, Andrea?
It does, my friend, it does very well. There are a few things, by the way, that struck me during your speech, especially it's you, Subra. We're talking about change mindset, change of infrastructure. It's probably at multiple levels. We're talking about infrastructure, and then when we talk about blockchain, because there is an underlying infrastructure where blockchain DLTs are laid upon and are based upon. Again, bringing in harmonization, what could be the next step for technology to be really inclusive on both sides, both as for stakeholders, when I'm talking about SMEs, and at a macro country level? You mentioned Africa earlier on. we can also mention Middle East. We could also mention Central and South America. So next step, what could be to make this technology, blockchain, run in a smooth way, in a seamless way, to utilize the right term, because it should be seamless. So if we want to achieve an adoption and breaking out of adoption of technology, wanted to ask you, what could be the next step in being inclusive towards these micro companies, towards these countries that are left nowadays being apart from the big picture? That's maybe the real new revolution that we should target for.
Technology-wise, I believe it is still available, right? The mindset change, right? The question Meryl asked is the mindset of blockchain companies, right? I am not going to put any of my data into a centralized repository because that goes against the fundamental philosophy of blockchain, right? Democratized, decentralized way of thinking. I am not going to let any single governing body to be a governing body, right? That is the fundamental challenge why, I don't want to start a war with the cryptocurrency people, but that's a mindset that is seeing why cryptocurrencies cannot hold water when something starts to go wrong, because there is no underlying support mechanism. Whereas a trade finance needs a single party that can go back and then go answer. Why do we need a legal system? We need a legal system so that if one party does not fully fulfill their obligation in a trade contract, there has to be an arbitration or a court that determines what kind of damage that is payable, right? So this accreditation agency will become the validation saying that, yes, this is exactly what was agreed beyond a piece of paper that was signed, because it will involve every single data set that was done outside of the initial contract that was signed. So what needs to be done is blockchains to have that ability and willingness to work with a centralized repository.
Awesome, thanks, Shubhra. Chris, any thoughts into this from your side?
Yeah, I think there's, Shubhra said it all, in fact, but I think, of course, a world needs to be moved before we are really getting there, and one solution leads to another. But say, we've spoken about standardization, harmonization. Those are important aspects of global adoption, in my view, and in our view. I think we should keep it as simple as possible, and that's why I say the connection to existing technology is important for a real push, but also changing mindset, that it's not so complex as perceived. I think there's no limitation to what technology can do. It's all about a push, and sometimes those regions where technology is being absorbed successfully, it's mainly being pushed by government. So the authorities play an important role in getting things done there. Well, to add on what Shubhra already said, I think that if we get common, if there's say common mindset, and the industry, but also the government and countries themselves really understand that in order to remain important in their and to be able to remain sustainable, the government takes an important stake in what is required to get things done, then we are there as well. So the rest will follow. And I think that is something that remains as important in the quest we are going through at the moment.
Thanks, Chris. Just another question from my side that I had in mind. We're talking about blockchain, but as for your speech, what I picked up also on the paper, by the way, is definition of a sort of team sport between technology, not only between among different stakeholders within the whole chain, supply chain, and trade. From a technological point of view, what could be the next step in the interaction? What could be the best association in terms of technology? Not only blockchain. Blockchain solves a part of the problem, but what could be the secret tech recipe for the future? How these technology, and I'm asking especially Subra, which is the tech soul of the two of you, by the way, what could be the perfect scenario in terms of technology for breaking out in the digitalized trade finance?
Andrea, the day I resolve that question with a good answer, perfect answer, I will be the next unicorn.
I wish it might happen. And I wish to be by your side, by the way, because I know this is going to be
clearly you're on my side there.
Yeah.
No, but you see, I don't want to consider myself as a serious engineering mind, as many smart people who are in this room as well as not in the room, right? But I definitely believe that we need to think a little bit differently to get there. There are smarter people who will find the answer, who will find the right way to write the technical specifications for it. But I'm hoping that we will probe and provoke enough for these people to get their act together. Chris, you want to add?
Yeah, I will add to that. I think that's one. So the mindset must change. But I think we need to take a step back again. Look what went wrong, what went good. Learn from that. And I strongly believe, and Subra is in agreement with that. There are a number of solutions already there that need to grow and need to be embraced by the market. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot has been done to make trade better already again. But I think we need to be willing to cross borders again, and teaming up is really important to get things done. Right? We mentioned collaboration, which is required to get in trade in general. So you have to collaborate to get things done. We are prepared to share documents with each other, but why aren't we willing to start digitalizing together and make our lives better? So I think that mindset must be top of mind again. The willingness to and the energy we had, say 2015, 16, 17, get the good things out of those years. Don't step in the same falls you made in the past. So be careful what you do. Make use of existing technology, and save a lot of money, and be sure that what you do is being validated on a regular basis with your future users, your clients, your stakeholders. And if you're not right, stop and start all over again, and be willing to invest money. But I'm sure that you don't have to invest the amounts that have been invested in the past, because there's a lot already known to us. We are more familiar with technology than we were in 2015. So we know what we can do and what we cannot do, and when we'll be successful to get things done. So it's yeah, learn from the lessons we had in the past, and get the right people together, with help from governing bodies like the industry bodies like the ICC, but also BSCA. There are a number of bodies that are really willing to change but they need help, and I think we should help them.
Thanks, Chris. This is great thought that I share fully, by the way, especially when you state that it's not about reinventing the wheel. There are already products, things in place, a bunch of technologies being deployed recently that really was to make a difference. So it's a matter more of collaboration between them. What's been done all over the last few years, and it has been done a lot. So we should think on what went wrong so far in the market and in the adoption and finding ways to go through this. So I encourage people to make more questions. We come on the top of an hour right now. So if no other question, I think we can hang on. This one maybe. No, it's Miral. Many thanks for excellent webinar and discussion. Thanks, Miral, for being with us, by the way. So, no more questions. It was a pleasure, Chris, to have you, by the way, to share your massive experience. Subra, too. Yeah, thanks for being with us. I know it's pretty late for you now, this moment. So thanks for the effort, and thanks for being with us, sharing this insights, the thoughts that you share on the article, which I thought were really great since the beginning when I read it. So I thank the both of you for staying with us. Follow us again in the game. We're going to be back in 2 weeks' time with another meeting, focusing on innovation in trade finance and how this innovation could contribute in filling the trade finance gap, which is another big issue within the sustainability world in trade finance. So thanks, Chris. Thanks, Subra. Thanks to the attendance of the meeting. And see you in a couple of weeks again. Thanks for following us.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Enjoy the evening. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye, Subra. Bye, Chris.
Bye-bye.
Bye.